For the record, that is my new get out of bed in the morning song. The only way to get hyped up for this weekend, ladies and gentlemen, the British and Irish Lions tour is here. We are less than 48 hours away from the first match in South Africa. It will be the Sigma Lions, not the Emirates Lions, as we thought. The Sigma Lions up against the British and Irish Lions on Saturday night. And just to talk about that for the next sort of half an hour or 45 minutes, depending on how many people we jump in here, I'm joined by Lukhanyo Chongweni, who most of the people know. He's done a watch along. We'll be doing a watch along tomorrow for the Currie Cup. And yeah, so it's going to be an interesting weekend. But Chongs, you well? Keeping well?
Yeah, no, evening, Steve. Evening, everyone who's tuned in. Yeah, no, all right. Grahamstown a bit getting cold now, but yeah, all right. We're getting ready to go.
Grahamstown's weather is not the best at the best of times, so I can imagine how cold it is there. Don't miss it. And hopefully you guys will get some rainfall. But yeah, what a weekend we've got coming up here. We've got Springboks tomorrow night, and then British and Irish Lions on Saturday. So we'll start with the Lions, and then we'll sort of work our way towards talking about a bit about the box sort of towards the end. But
sure.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, before we sort of talk about this weekend, we'll sort of talk about the last tour. How much of the last tour do you remember? Because what I can remember is sort of vague. Obviously, I remember the Mornay Steyn penalty, and I remember the Lions being absolutely annihilated. Well, the Sigma Lions, that is. But what do you remember? What are your memories that kind of sort of stand out?
Yeah, no, Steve. I think if I were to be honest, there isn't much that sort of obviously jumps. I was quite youngish at the time, and I don't think I loved rugby as much as sort of I am now, and in terms of being involved. But definitely, I mean, I remember the Habana try comes to mind, one of the tests, and obviously, who doesn't know the Mornay Steyn? And I think also the one game that stands out was one of the reserve teams. The SA Invitational.
For me,
side.
I don't know if it was the Invitational, but I also remember the one game the one team quite well. I don't know why.
Yeah,
I can't even remember the result. I just remember that game sticking out for some reason.
Yeah, I think for the first time, and a lot of it was made out because a lot of sort of players of color in the club squad, club system were getting opportunities. A lot of guys that we weren't aware of, so it was quite build up. There was quite some build up around that game. So that's also a particular game that I sort of remember during that time.
I mean, something that I didn't even actually realize, and he mentioned today at his press conference, was Zondile Stick was saying that he actually played against the Lions back for the Southern Kings back in the day. Apparently came off. I mean, I don't remember it all, so I'm actually going to try and dig out the highlights. But apparently came off the bench and was guilty of being a bit overeager and deciding to go and defend in the fly half channel, and he got chipped by I think he said it was a Garo that chipped in behind there, and they scored a try. So he doesn't have particularly good memories, but yeah, I'm so excited for this weekend because I think, as you say, I enjoyed what I used to watch the Springbok games. I used to watch the Lions game, being a Lions supporter, but I wouldn't say I was rugby mad. So 12 years later, now being able to, I mean, can't go to the stadium, so I'm gutted because I should have been in the stadium this weekend? I think I had tickets for actually. But and actually be able to get into the Six Nations with this as a sort of a precursor, it's going to be a really, really cool tour. But in terms of the teams, by the way, let me know where you guys are listening from or watching. Let me know what you think of the Lions team that's been announced, either Lions team, both the Sigma Lions and the British and Irish Lions. But we'll start with the tourists. An unbelievable squad being named by Gatland.
It's crazy. It's crazy, Steve.
Like I don't know if he just decided to like Google the Emirates Lions and watch the sort of 2017-18 highlights and thought, oh well, this is the side that's going to give us a lot of problems. But if he hasn't been watching the last 6 months, literally none of those players are still around. So you've got a 22-year-old captain.
Yeah. No, Steve. Listen, Warren just wants to get off on a bang, clearly. And I think from a tour perspective, it's always nice to sort of get that big W first up, just to get the boys going, just to get the vibes going. But I didn't think it would go to these extremes. I think it's very close to sort of full strength. British and Irish Lions squad, at least team, 22, match day 23.
Yeah, I mean, I think that especially that backline, I think for me is what's so daunting. I think a couple of replacements probably in the forwards, but I mean a lot of players who I think are very good contenders. I think, you know, whilst everyone's technically a contender for a starting position, I kind of feel that the people who are starting who might not be right now in the final test 11, test 15 are definitely players who could potentially push for spots. You know, the likes of Courtney Laws, Hamish Watson is somebody that a lot of people are saying might not have the grunt to be able to play the Springboks, but I really like him. But which of the players, which selection I think for the British Irish Lions excites you the most?
Excites me. I've always been a fan of Owen Farrell online, the 12th jumper. Right. I just like how he sort of controls, but I think Reese Zamet, if I'm pronouncing the name correctly.
Lightning.
Right. Yeah, I think he's lightning quick. Also with Stuart Hogg and Finn Russell, that's going to be interesting to see what they can do, because I think, you know, they bring that flair. They're very exciting players, dynamic players, and you know, I like that style of play. I like that style of play. So if I had to name those will be sort of my three picks in the back line in terms of who I'm really excited to see go, especially Finn in the 10 jumper. I think he's been really good.
Yeah, and he's a very non. It was quite interesting. I was watching. I think it was Johnny Wilkinson that was I was talking about, and he said that every sort of flower half potential that they had. This is before the squad was even named. So back when Johnny Sexton was part of the mix potentially, and he said that every one of them brings something different. You know, he said he didn't really sort of back George Ford to make it, so it was a decent shot. But you're saying that, you know, you've got Finn Russell, who's very exciting, plays off the cuff, a very sort of bit of a sort of New Zealand sort of like a Rich Mwanga type player. You know, he's a playmaker. You know, not the biggest person. Yeah. He said, you know, you've got Johnny Sexton, who's very reliable. You know exactly what you get out of him, but you worry about injuries. Then you've got Dan Biggar, who's probably a bit of the sort of the mold of everyone. You know, he's got a very reliable boot. He's a very reliable defender. You know, maybe not the most creative player, but not a bad player to get the backline going. He can sort of run it himself. So he's a very safe pick, and I think that he probably will be the starting. I mean, the man of the match against Japan. But I agree. I think Finn Russell is somebody for me. I mean, he's going to be the second best fly half on display on Saturday. But he should be a good watch. And in the pack,
100%. I mean, Mario Itoje. It's going to be interesting to see in terms of sort of where he's at. Simply because obviously Saracens, yes, they won sort of that second division, if I can put it like that. But I think it's going to be interesting to see if he's also sort of match fit. And I think also as a fellow sort of front rower, tight head prop, Carl Sinclair, I think it was unfortunate to miss out initially. I was very shocked. He was one of the guys where I was like, okay, what are you doing, Gatlin? I understand you hate English players, but come on, dude. Like, seriously. like, come on. It's really not. So I'm excited to see Carl Sinclair, because I think he's fantastic in the loose. I think he's more than decent come set piece. And I think he's hungry. I think we just might see a very different player come this Lions trip.
Yeah.
Because I'd imagine
I mean, I think in many ways, and somebody made a very good point, and they were saying that when the tour was first picked, and we'll go to some comments now in the moment. But when they say when the squad was first picked, they were saying, how often is it that, you know, the person who goes on to be like one of the biggest influences, and sometimes even the player of the tour, sometimes aren't even the players that go on the plane. You know, we often have injuries and players get flown in last minute. So, for example, I mean, like Josh Navidi, I think he's somebody I'm very excited to try and to see. I'm a big fan of him. But I think Carl Sinclair was. I mean, I think it'll actually end up. I think, you know, if he had picked Carl Sinclair off the bat, I don't think he would have had the Carl Sinclair he's currently got in that squad at the moment. You know, I think that he did when he gave that interview, and he said that he had to do a lot of thinking about it, and he knows what he has to fix. And after that, just went on a rampage and ran a form. And Gatlin was honest about it. You know, Gatlin said, "I hope he keeps sticking up the middle finger to me throughout the rest of the tour." He said, you know, because that's kind of the response you want. So it's a scary prospect. I also think, you know, maybe not so much this week, but when we get to the Springboks, you know, Carl Sinclair's got unfinished business from that World Cup final. So I think he'll definitely want to respond. So look at some of the comments. Francois Smith says Lions are going to win. Yeah, we've all heard the joke before, but Yeah, if the Josie Lions play the way they played against Western Province, it could be a bit more interesting game. I think that's probably the biggest problem with trying to choose this game is that the Lions have been so inconsistent. You've got the Lions that pitches up and beat the Bulls, and then you've got the Lions that gets pumped by the Pumas, and like 6 days later they then go and put a lot of points into the Western Province before getting a couple of yellow cards. So it's such an inconsistent side, which makes it quite difficult to pick. KPMG is asking why has Yanni not been selected. Yeah, also some interesting calls. We'll go through the Sigma lines in a bit, and I'll sort of try and talk to you. I was in the press conference with Ivan van Rooyen, and I'll sort of talk about a couple of the players who weren't picked. Sean O'Farrell, even Sean says I had a feeling he was going to go Farrell at 12. I'm happy to see him get a first shot. I wouldn't say I'm happy that he gets the first shot at the Lions, but I'm keen to see him play. I was surprised with Hogg as captain. I mean, personally, if I was picking, I know that Gatton likes to have a captain close to the scrum, and that's why probably somebody like Conor Murray makes sense, and Edwin Jones is always going to be in the front running and stuff like that. But I'm a huge Stuart Hogg fan. I think that if I was picking without any sort of worry about who's close to the rack and who's close to the referee and stuff like that, I would have picked Stuart Hogg. After Edwin Jones, I probably would have gone Stuart Hogg as tour captain because I think he's a tremendous player and he's a proper leader for that Scottish side. When a team plays well, he's one of those players that his energy just lifts, and he lifts a lot of people up. Francis Smith now saying, wait, it'll be a tie. No, I don't. Yeah, I'm very much on the bench as what's going to happen. But yeah, we'll talk about this a little bit. We'll talk about KPNG saying, how big of a loss is Edwin Jones to the British and Irish Lions? What was your reaction when he was picked? I think people are saying a lot of South Africans. I think it was Mark here, and it was pretty much one journalist who kind of sort of wrote him off a little bit and said he was too old, and a lot of people saying he's too old and not going to be big enough. But what was your first initial reaction when Edwin Jones was picked and named tour captain? Seem to have lost you a little bit. Oh, sorry, we lost Chong. I'll try to get him back. Stick with this for a few minutes. Wait, hang on. I've got a second one coming in here. Sorry, we'll try and get Chong's back in a minute. Chong, can you hear me now?
Sorry. Yeah, sorry about that.
No worries. I don't know, but you're looking good and you're sounding good. So yeah, what was your reaction to Edwin Jones when he was named tour captain?
Yeah, I won't lie. I think I was surprised that he was named tour captain because I didn't think he'd sort of play the required minutes. But I think it adds value to have that sort of character on tour, and it sort of made sense in terms of from a selection point of view, the experience that he brings, and I think generally he's got that respect, and you need those figures on tour, especially when you're going to be away. From a team perspective, as a coach, especially, you don't want to be the one who's giving out instructions and who's instructing quite a bit. You want the players to sort of take charge and to be able to sort of go about their own business. And I think Edwin Jones would have played a massive role in that, just in terms of the team dynamic and the team morale and getting that going. So from that perspective, it made sense, right? The captaincy, I thought he would have gone for Owen Farrell or Mario Itoje, sort of someone who's a guaranteed starter and someone who deserves the spot first and foremost. And I think Edwin Jones is probably second, third choice lock rather than a starter, right? So that's why I was a bit surprised that he was made captain. But in terms of the selection, I think it made sense. It made sense with the experience, the calming influence. And we saw Wales, an average Wales team, but because of his leadership, they went far in the World Cup. So yeah, I think it was a good selection, personally. But yeah, it's a pity. I think it's going to be a massive loss for them.
Yeah, I think he's the type of character you want in the squad. I think if I was Warren Gatton, I'd be sort of tempted, even after they said, listen, he's out for the shoulder, say, well, can we take him anyway? He's one of those players, he just, he conducts himself very well. As you said, lots of people respect him. He just doesn't do anything wrong. He always says the right things. He's never got bad press around him. He's always, holds himself very well. He's a purpose sort of like the idea of sort of civil leadership. I think he's a very nice example. So I think he's going to quite a big loss. But I think Conor Murray's an interesting pick. It is his third tour, so Gatton going with a lot of experience there. Yeah. But I think that what was quite interesting, it's amazing how the debate sort of surfaced almost immediately with the fact that, the idea of a tour captain as opposed to sort of necessarily the test captain. Even if Adam Jones is not going to start that first game, just having that, having him as the tour captain, being able to, taking up team meetings and taking the lead when it comes to talking about training and stuff like that. I think it would have been massive influence. I think he's a very big player, lost, but yeah, I mean it's pity. And I mean, look, I suppose they've lost a big leader. We've lost a big leader in Dwayne at the moment. Hopefully, touch wood, we can try and get Dwayne back for at least sort of second or third test.
Sure.
But I also think that when we'll talk about when we get to the sort of Springboks, I think that Springboks have also got quite a couple of players who need to sort of step up a little bit for leadership stuff. But we'll talk about the Sigma Lions now. New name. Not quite convinced I like it. Sigma Lions sounds a bit odd. Never even heard of the brand, which never helps. At least when they announced Emirates Lions, I thought, well, here we go. Check on the signings.
Sure.
and yet, all that's happened is that on Tuesday, 3 former Lions players moved to England. Today, Hachiba Diamani was confirmed to be a Western Province player. Yesterday, the Bulls brought back Ruan Combrink and Lionel Lapouse. So, well, for the Sigma Lions, it's not been a fun time, but they've named a very interesting side. So and I'll actually read the side out because it was named a couple of hours ago. It's not some people might have missed it. But starting in the front, it's gone with Ivan van Rooyen's actually gone with this pretty much second string back row. So we've got Nathan Macbeth, PJ Boerta, Ruan Dreyer in the starting front row, Ruben Skumer and Reinhard Northnagel, and the loose trio, which is Sibusiso Sangweni, Vincent Chatuka, Frankie Horn, who is captaining the side at 22 years old, Dylan Smith, Jordan Hendrickse, the 20-year-old, Raz Baklana and Jumbo Lengo, the 2 wings, Berger Undal, Manuel Ras are the 2 centers, EW Fun starts at full back, and your replacements are Jakob Sahi, Steve Satoli, Carly Sardi, Ruan Strauly, Emmanuel Chatuka, Morne Vandenberg, Fred Zellinger, and Dan Creel. So, first things first, what do you think about the experiment of playing? I mean, I know Andrea Springbok capped, but it is probably the second sort of string front row. Do you think that it's a case of a bit like Jake White's been doing with the Bulls, go out and weather a storm for 50 minutes and then we'll try and put on the big boys? But the problem with the British Irish Lions is that they're just going to bring on they can bring on a whole new test front row anyway.
Yeah.
But what do you think? Do you think it's a decent gamble, or would you have just gotten power straight from the start?
Steve, I think the pack is gonna struggle. It could possibly be messy, but I think it's a fantastic opportunity for those guys. And most likely, besides Carlo Fasahi, I think the starting are guys who are very good at set piece time. Not necessarily in terms of open play, generally speaking, but I think he's gone 40-40 split, right? Where he's gonna say the front row, gents, just give you all, right, for those first 40, and then on he will sort of then bring his sort of starting front row to sort of see if he can stay and also possibly push. I don't know what the score will be at halftime, but try and push and sort of have that set piece dominance at least come scrum time.
And what's unfortunately probably more than likely going to happen is that they're going to get completely decimated from the get-go. At what stage, if you've got your coaching cap on, at what stage do you think, right, well, the experiment didn't work? I mean, how can you wait for the 40 minutes? But if they're being absolutely slaughtered, do you sit there and say, right, after half an hour, I'm going to have to pull them, and maybe not put the entire new front row on, but put on like a Carl Desari, who you know is probably out of those 6 the best scrummager.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, as a coach, these guys are professionals, right? In as much as you are playing the British and Irish Lions, the last thing you want to go out there and embarrass yourself. So if it is a case where they're just getting absolutely murdered at scrum time, then definitely after 30 minutes, I'm pulling my tight head Ruan Dreyer off and I'm putting on Carlos Sardi, because I think Sardi, unfortunately, there's a long line in terms of the park in our national or international side, but I don't think he'll look out of place, to be honest. His set piece, his scrummaging is very strong. So I think he'll be more than able, right? It's just now a matter of, can he then obviously last the whole game, which will then, if you put him early, so you sort of balance those things. But listen, if they're getting murdered after 30 minutes, definitely as a coach, the last thing you want is to be sitting there knowing that you're going to lose another scrum. It's horrible. It just kills team morale, generally speaking.
Yeah, and as I say, unfortunately, I think that's probably more than likely going to be the case. I'm interested to see how they go. I think that if there's one thing that this Lions team is, it likes to shock people, and they like the underdog. I asked Ivan from where I said, the underdog tag is back, and he was pretty much saying that he keeps talking about first prize he wants to win. So he's going out to have a win, but he pretty much said, I think, if we look at some of the other selections, is that he said that there's no point being conservative, and I love that about it. He said that there's no point trying to go into the game thinking, we'll take our 3 points and we'll go set piece to set piece, and we'll try and sort of stick it in and grind out a victory, because it's just you're playing against many test caps. I mean, as he said, he says most of them that are starting on Saturday for the Lions have got more test caps than the Lions have in terms of their ages. It's that sort of chalk and cheese. And I'm going to try and do, and when I'll do our official preview, which will be out in the morning, I'm going to try and find sort of the average age of the Lions, stuff like that. But it excites me that they want to have a go, and I think that nothing says that more than a couple of selections. And for me, look, I mean, the locks, I don't think it's too much. I think Reynard North is a nice one for the center and for the future. I think Ruben Schoeman's improved a lot, trying to sort of embrace that enforcer role. But this loose trio, as somebody rightly said in the press conference, he said, the loose trio, it's 20, 22, 22. These players will all play in the next, could if they look after themselves, could be playing against the British Irish Lions again in 12 years' time, because they're so young. And Ivan van Rooyen was basically he says that with this loose trio, he said they're a special group, and he says that he reckons that maybe not in 12 years' time, but they could very well be. First of all, he reckons they will be playing the British Irish Lions, so they're that good. But he reckons that they all three of them could be potential future box. So what do you? I mean, Victor Tutuka has been on the radar for a while. Frankie Horn suddenly coming in, new signing, captaining the side as well. And then Sibusiso Sangweni has had a brilliant breakout season. What's the take? I mean, can they try and actually have a go at Courtney Laws, Hamish Watson, and Tlape Falata? My God.
I think the British and Irish, obviously, they've got the experience on them. But, man, when I look at Sangweni, when I look at Vincent Chituka, just the explosiveness, the dynamic, the power that they bring to the game, it's exciting to see. It's exciting to see. Frankie Horn, very good sort of under 18 junior rugby player. Now he's transitioning into the senior side. So I'm really excited to see what he'll bring. So it's going to be down to that tight five. If that tight five can possibly contain or compete, right? Compete with the British and Irish Lions. That loose trio is exciting. Vincent Chituka, had he been called up for the box, I don't think too many of us in the country would have been disappointed with that. I think he's been fantastic for a good solid 3 seasons, sort of now, 2 seasons, give or take, where he's been playing consistent, but especially sort of over the past year where he's just gotten so bigger, so quicker, and he understands.
He does just look giant at the moment.
Yeah, he's just massive. So I think that loose trio can honestly compete, Steve. But I think it's going to be down to the tight five if they can sort of contain the British and Irish Lions, because without that, obviously, there's not much that the loose trio, unfortunately, will be able to do.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think Reynard North-Markel and Ruben Schoeman are going to have big games. I think those two, those two can make sure the Lions are operating. And hopefully, we can get a lot of the grunt work done. If Ruben Schoeman, North-Markel, even Frankie Horn to a certain degree, if they can do a lot of the grunt and allow, Chituka and Sangweni to try and just use that, as you said, that explosiveness that they've got, I'm hoping that they'll be able to. I mean, Vince Chituka is somebody who I'm expecting a big thing from him this Saturday. I think that he's probably become the Lions. Him and when Simalani was there, probably the 2 Lions, talisman, and probably Carly Sardi, one front row, back row. It's nice little spine actually for the Lions to sort of work around. But I think Chituka is fantastic. I think a lot of people were calling for Albert Lowe for the box, but I think Chituka has been operating at a similar level for longer. Yeah, as you said, he's 22 years old, and yet he's been playing for 2-3 years. I mean, I saw a photo of Lionel Mapu back in the Lions. He hasn't played for the Lions for about 2 years now, and he's celebrating with Vincent Chituka. So it's unbelievable. He's been so good. And yet he's 22 years old. I mean, he's got another 10, 12 years left. And so I'm very excited by that loose trio. I think the scrum off picks is a little bit boring. I would have liked to see Morne van den Berg. I think he's a little bit of a live wire. But 20-year-old and literally 20 on Monday, Jordan Hendrickse, my boy, at flow half up against Finn Russell. doesn't get. It doesn't get. I mean, how's that? I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. To try and see what you're made of.
Chomping at the bit, like that's one matchup that I'm really excited to see because Jordan, I think he's a real deal. I think he's just the composure, sort of the first couple of games that he played for the Lions before he went to the junior box. Man, you can just see the confidence in the kid, just the way he takes it to the line. You know, he's got a very good kicking game. At least I saw when he was playing for the junior box. That's
monster boot as well, big boot.
Yeah, massive boot. And I think he's physically as well. He's physically there. He's not, for example, a Cohen Bosch, like what a Cohen Bosch was coming sort of into pro rugby as a 20-year-old.
He still has those question marks around him. You know, can he tackle? Can he make this? Whereas I think I'll try and find it now because I think it was an amazing stat. So continue, and I'll try and find the stat from one of the games that Hendricks had played.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm excited. I think just also the way he just got the junior box going in the junior series. I think you could just see that he's playing at a level like he's at a level higher than that, right? And if you're at a level higher than sort of international junior rugby, I think you're cut out for the professional game. So Jordan versus Finn, I think that's going to be exciting. Two exciting players. Probably Finn obviously has got the experience, maybe a bit more flair, I think. But I think Hendricks is a proper player. He's a proper player, and I think he's the sort of character as well that would be chomping at the bit. British and Irish Lions, an opportunity to showcase what he's about, you know. And I'm a massive fan of Jordan. He's every single aspect of his game. I think at this moment, yes, it's very early in his career, but I think he's ticking the right boxes. He can tackle, he can kick, tactical kicking for poles as well. He's very accurate. Going for poles. So Steve, Jordan Hendricks. I'm a massive fan. I think that's a proper rugby player.
I think it's a matter of time. We've got a lot of depth, but it's a matter of time before we're going to see the two Hendrickses playing in the box. You know, we were robbed of that last year where they were supposed to play. I mean, imagine those two. You look at the level they're playing now. Those two, if we didn't have COVID last year, we're going to be at the Under-20 World Championships. I mean, those two for me. I mean, Jaden, I think, could have been part of the box squad now. And I think Jordan looks like somebody who could be in there in a year or two. I mean, imagine those two last year operating at junior level. I think they would have been phenomenal. So,
yeah.
But I mean, this was Jordan's stats from the Rainbow Cup. So he played four games. I'm trying to find the minute. He came off the bench twice. And in those 4 games, he beat 3 defenders, had 3 clean breaks, 3 offloads, and a try assist. He made 18 tackles, missing just 2, a turnover 1 against the Western Province, where they went down 39 points to 37. He was asked to make 8 tackles. He made every single one of them, and he often operated in the sort of center channel. So that was the one. I think that's probably the aspect for me that's impressed me the most is the fact that at that sort of age. You know, if he sees David Delindi running towards him, he's fine. He's going to say, well, you know what, I'm going to put my shoulder down. I'm going to have a go. Whereas that's always kind of been sometimes the fly half issues. You know, people have had that criticism of Yankees, of Cohen Bosch. You know, even Morning State had those sort of critics. You know, the fly halves that can't really sort of tackle. So I think Jordan Hendricks, as you said, ticks a lot of boxes. And I just hope the occasion doesn't get to him because I don't think it will. I think he's a very confident player. You could see him at that SC Under-20. It was like he was playing a club game. You know, he 100%. Was just like, it's Argentina Under-20. I was playing against Dwayne and the Buggers, you know, a couple of weeks ago. This is beneath me type thing. So it's almost a little bit of a cockiness thing, but I love the confidence he's got. And Jaden's got a similar thing. I mean, you look at their ages, but they play like they've been playing there for years.
Yeah, season companions.
Yeah. So I look some of the comments. KPMG says Alan Jones was like a Dwayne Vermeulen type. I think he was sort of important to like Tyke Wales. Sean O'Farrell says I'm looking forward to see if Sam Simmons can keep up his try scoring form from the English Premiership. Yeah, he's gonna be a very exciting player coming off the bench. A very interesting pick there from Gatlin, and I think Eddie Jones is probably somebody that will be sitting there saying you can do well, but not too well, because I think a lot of people have been criticizing because he hasn't had enough chances for England. And I think another player who I'm very keen to see is Ras Bakwana, who we finally sort of seeing that the type of player that the Lions thought they'd sign, because you know they signed him and a lot of people said who was he, but he was the leading try scorer in the Pro 14, so it was really exciting. We thought, well, here we go, but he's he took a while to get used to it. I must admit, for the first couple of months, I was sort of thinking, is he going to make it? But those last two games, particularly the game against the Western Province, him and Reece Hammett, they're playing. I think that having said that, I think he's in the 11 jersey this weekend. Is so that should be quite a nice matchup. Not necessarily they really go one on one with each other, but those two are proper finishers.
Yeah, no, Rabs. I think, the one thing I like about Makhwane is just his all-round game. I think he's one of the wingers is fantastic in the air, and obviously typical South African wing, quick, fleet-footed. He's got the step going, and I think he's really settling into the sort of Lions team now. And I think COVID sort of the stop-start coming into a new side that might have thrown him off a bit as well. Initially, not getting that sort of extended run, but yeah, he's looked very impressive in the last couple of weeks or so. Definitely.
Yeah, I think that I'm hoping. Because he needs to make it up because I think Jumbo Lengo's got a lot of physicality, but he's been in the periphery. And I think EW for you, and I'd rather have Decker Creel at fullback because at least he's quicker. Sure. Yeah, it's gonna be a difficult time at the back there for. But yeah, so there's definitely a couple of players which I think as a Lions fan, that's probably where I'm kind of at. I'm kind of more sort of we're gonna get beaten. I think that's kind of a bit of an inevitability. Hopefully it's not going to be the 72-point thrashing that it was back in 2009. But it's performances, I mean, if you lose, I don't know, 35 points to 5, and Jordan Hendrickson has some really good moments, or Vincent Tuka goes and sits down somebody like Courtney Laws or something like that. Those are the moments you remember. And I think 100%. that's what Ivan Van Rooyen must be saying to them. He's saying, listen, guys, you're not expected to win. We're not expected to do well here, but you're going to be playing in front of the biggest audience that you've ever played in front of. Unfortunately, not physically, because they probably would have played. I mean, if it would have been packed out at Ellis Park for a lot of these players the first time ever. But there's literally millions of people watching them, far more than Super Rugby Unlocked and Rainbow Cup and Curry Cup now. So, it was ever a time for. My only worry is that they're probably going to be putting themselves in the shop window, and I wonder how many top 14 and Premiership clubs might go and say, that could be a nice player. He has to have some euros, have some pounds. My probably a bit of a side worry. KPMG makes a nice point here, saying that this is also Warren Gatton's first tour choosing a different attack coach. Now Gregor Townsend down here shows he wants to try some different tactics about the box. I think that will be quite an interesting look. Let's be honest. I don't think anything that's come from the Lions announcement, from the squad announcement, from some of the picks in the squads to some of the coaching picks, it's not going to be the Lions we thought it was going to be the Lions 6 months ago. We spent months and months saying they're going to pick a really big pack. They're going to try and front up, because if you can't front up against the box, you're not going to be able to do it. And then you picked especially if you look at the loose forwards, very mobile loose forwards, not necessarily the biggest players. Like Nova Napola, for example, at number 8, stuff like that. So I think that we're going to see a British National Lions side that will try to throw the ball a little bit more around. And I mean, Scotland are a fantastic side to watch when they get it right. They've scored some really nice tries. Yeah. So I mean, do you think we'll see are the British National Lions? And we might get a bit of a taste of it maybe more when they sort of play like the SAA and maybe like the Bulls or the Sharks. But do you think we're going to see a British National Lions that might sort of try and not necessarily try and beat the Springboks at their own game and just try and say, well, this is where we think that you're vulnerable. We're going to try and exploit these areas.
Sure. Yeah, I think Gatlin made a brave decision, and it's arguably the right decision, right? I think he's picked forwards that can compete, but I think he's not trying to match the box, because I don't think too many nations can match the box. I mean, even our sort of 5th, 6th, 7th sort of choice players are dominating in the English Premiership. They're dominating in top in terms of the physicality. So I think it's like inbred into South Africans a lot of the time. I mean, our under 9 games in South Africa are even very physical. So I think Gatlin has sort of taken the right approach in terms of saying, okay, I'll pick a pack that will definitely be able to compete with the box come the physicality, but from their side of things, saying maybe let's throw it around a bit. Because they've got exciting wingers. So I think it would be unfortunate if they sort of play the bash slow game, because then they're playing right into the box teams, and not too many teams can actually break down the box physically. So I think he's made the bold move, the right move. It's just going to be interesting if Townsend is going to be able to also bring everyone together in such a disrupted environment, because that's unfortunately the downside with playing exciting rugby, is that if you don't have the chemistry right, it can easily go wrong very quickly. But I think the sort of more expansive game approach will definitely suit the British and Irish Lions much better, especially considering that they've got explosive wingers, and also keeping in mind the sort of Springbok defensive system with the wingers shutting in. I think they will try and expose the wingers one-on-ones, and I think Gatlin got to a point where maybe in his analysis, he got to a point where it was like he thinks that one-on-one, his wingers against the box, possibly the wingers can get the better of the sort of Springbok wingers and then take it from there.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's going to be quite weird sort of seeing a British and Irish Lions side which does try and sort of throw it around. And I mean, I think we've seen it in the past when the Boks have been outdone, but when you sort of see upsets, it's often a case of teams just sort of taking a chance. And I mean, that's what Japan did. They took a chance against us, and it worked.
Yeah.
Look at some of the comments here. Damien's not that big. Let's see how good he is when Nagami Lamape runs at him. Then we'll see how good he is. Well, hopefully we will. Maybe, I mean, unfortunately, no Super Rugby at the moment, so it'll take a while for that. But maybe when he makes the Boks in a couple of years' time. Why is Ruandre starting? Where is Yanni? So I think there was another question earlier about Yanni du Plessis. So Yanni du Plessis was in the squad and he was there to be picked. I don't quite know what the final thinking is. He hasn't been playing in the last couple of weeks, and that's what ruled out Jacob Creel. So I think that's why they said for Yanni du Plessis. Must admit, I wouldn't say I'm massively upset he's not playing. I think that tight heads. I mean, you've got Ruandre and Cardisardi, so you've got a Bok cap tight head, and you've got somebody who, as we said earlier, wouldn't be a miss in that Bok squad. John Linnell saying the problem with South African rugby is that we don't look at the young talent and need to work with them and build them, take them into their tour and give them freedom to play. Yeah, I think that it's been quite an interesting year because I think that we've got a lot. I mean, I think it's something like 20 tests in about like 26 weeks or something by the time we start that first test. I think we've got a period, I think it's like September and like October. I think we've got like 5 or 6 weeks between the Super Rugby, I mean, the Rugby Championship and the end of year tour. But the actual Lions tour pretty much rolls straight into the Rugby Championship. So I think that we will start seeing more players being integrated. We've got an SAA game, which is very nice to see players like, and we're seeing Fassi tomorrow, but I think that, we'll probably see Apelele Fassi maybe at fullback for that SAA game. We'll see something like, I want to see the Similani playing, Nicholas Janssen van Rensburg maybe playing. Hopefully somebody like Joseph Dweber playing as well. Very keen to see him. So I think that we will see have some time later on this year. John Linnell saying this is the strongest British and Irish Lions team ever picked. That's a very big call. And MC saying Boks by 40, British Lions by 40 against the Emirates Lions. Both teams will arrive at the first test undercooked. I think the British Irish Lions won't be undercooked at all. I think they've got, look, they are playing fewer games. They normally play 10 games in a tour. This time they're only playing 8. So they would have normally probably thrown in another, probably like 2 more invitational games. For example, I'm pretty sure there's like a Maori All Blacks game. In fact, there wasn't a Maori All Blacks game. So there's often those sort of invitational sides. And then finally, Kobe just says they did talk about and saying the Lions tour isn't time to blood many players for COVID and everything, but I agree. Hope to see a lot more young blood in the Rugby Championship. So I think that, we can move on to the Springboks now. I think we've spoken a lot about the British Irish Lions. So the Boks in action tomorrow, and a big youngster in Apelele Fassi getting a start, and Jasper Wiese getting a debut off the bench, and Roscoe Speckman, good old Graham Stonian will be starting on the one wing as well. But I think that in terms of the youngsters, with the fact that we're playing Argentina twice in South Africa, and then we go over immediately to play 2 tests in Australia and 2 tests in New Zealand. I mean, that's 4 weeks over there. Do you think, because I've kind of got a hunch that we're going to kind of see a similar thing to what we saw when we beat the All Blacks in Wellington, where Erasmus sent over a group before and said, this is going to be the group to play here, but a lot of our players are going to go over, they're going to get settled in New Zealand, they're going to prepare, they're going to be there. I mean, do you think that, as a coach, would you think about maybe looking at those 2 Argentina games and thinking, you know what, especially if you've won the British and Irish Lions series, we'd obviously want to compete the Rugby Championship, but why don't we send over the bulk of our squad to Australia, to New Zealand, and let them acclimatise and get really ready, whilst maybe a bit of a fringe side with a couple of extra players stays in South Africa and plays those 2 Argentina tests, or at least maybe do it after the first Argentina test?
Sure. Yeah, Steve, I think it'll highly depend on sort of the outcome of the series. And sort of, I think if the Boks win and they put a good performance, I think we'll be in a sort of comfortable, confident position to maybe say, get them playing the first game and sending them over for the second game. But I think Argentina, there was a series where they played against New Zealand where they looked very good. And you don't want to be losing against Argentina at home, right? And I think it'll also depend on the outcome of the first game, sort of in terms of how Argentina play and what they brought. Because if you're going to be touring for a month, I think you want to definitely win your two home games. It just makes it so much easier for the tournament. So I think there's a lot of factors to factor in. I don't think it's a clear case. I don't think he's sat down and said, okay, right, you're going to be sending a team a week ahead or whatever the case is. I think it's going to be dependent on sort of the outcome of the series, but also, most importantly, the outcome of the first test, because the last thing you want to do, hypothetically speaking, is to have a close game the first weekend and then, just have a wholesale changes for the second game. I think it's a bit risky in terms of the competition as a whole, where you've got an opportunity to play 2 games at home, get 2 Ws, so that you're going overseas on tour with less pressure on the backdrop of winning 2 games and also having won the British and Irish Lions series.
Yeah, it's a difficult one because I mean, jeepers, four tests over. I mean, to a 4-week tour for the championship is a huge ask as well. So,
yeah,
look, at the end of the day, we're going to have to see rotation, because unfortunately, we will see injuries. That's part of the game, So that'll also necessitate, and I think that we put a nice blend. I mean, France Steyn, for example, I think we'll sort of see where he's at tomorrow. But I must admit, I'm a little bit worried about, whether he can continue to play the pace of the game, especially as a starter. Sure. I think that he's very, very good to bring off the bench. But he even said himself, he says he can't run around like he used to. All the younger guys who are full of energy and stuff like that. So sure. Something like inside center could be a potential position. If Damien Delindi, for example, gets injured, you're gonna have to bring an inside center. Something like Andre Estes can get a chance.
Sure.
So I think there's a lot of opportunity for the Boks to start letting players. And I also think that thankfully it looks like for the first time in a while we've got a coaching staff and a coaching setup which are aligning the entire nation sort of in one way, and also sure. Very much they're planners, they're tinkerers. So they'll be sitting there thinking, right, British and Irish Lions now, Rugby Championship. But literally, I reckon as soon as we finish the Rugby Championship, they're going to sit down and say, right, 2023 World Cup, where are we at?
Yeah.
Who's available, who's around here, what are the ages, who do we need to start integrating? Is Khaleesi going to be our captain at the next World Cup? If he's not, when do we sort of start integrating a new captain? When do we start integrating, new props or new locks and stuff like that? I think they're very much a team that are very good at planning. So I think that'll be. Yeah. I'm very interested to see the end of year tour and whether we start seeing a couple of new faces. And also whether they start. I'd like to see more invitational games and more SAA games. I'd like 100%. To see why can't we get a French Barbarians to come down and play 3 SAA games, and get 100%. Somebody like, I don't know, always a bit skeptical about our coaches, but even like somebody like a John Dobson or Sean Everett and something like that, and say, right, take these 3, these SAA for 3-match series and try and start sort of blooding those youngsters. Let's look at some of the comments, and then we'll talk about tomorrow and what we can expect tomorrow. Jean Renal reckons the Springboks will not be the British and Irish Lions for one reason only: these guys know each other inside out. That's not the strongest Springbok team that we can pick. Well, I think we'll sort of see where we're at when we get there. I think a lot of it comes down to players like if Andre Pollard's on form and who's going to be filling in at for Dwayne, and as R.K. Sneeman and David India, all right, stuff like that. No, Jaap Enkele is not part of the team for tomorrow. John L said, if I had to pick a Springbok team, it would be a very strong team. There's so many guys that deserve to be there, like guys like Zach Creel or Akif van der Merwe, maybe Colby should play at 15. A lot of people talking about the Colby at 15 shout. Played there in the final last week. It was last weekend? It was last weekend. I hope the Twins truly grab this opportunity with both hands. I hope one to see the Similani lights up in the centres when he gets a chance. Yeah, I'm very excited to see him get a chance at some stage. Sean Farrell says, plus Georgia have a chance to show the world they can compete with the big sides, plus shows why Georgia need a top-tier tournament, not have it easy they have in Rugby Europe. I agree. And KPMG say, you might be right, but we have great depth and the best coaching staff can ask for. I think Rusty deserves some trust for the fans of what he achieved. Well, I think that's the one thing. I think in the past, with a lot of coaches, I think there was always a little bit of apprehension towards Peter de Villiers. I think there's always a little bit of apprehension towards Hanneke Meyer. There's a lot of apprehension towards Alistair Coetzee, but I think that, and it helps when you win the World Cup, but I think that people do sit there. I think that the way that they orchestrated from where we were to where they became, I think that they've got a lot of credibility. Somebody like Mzandile Stick, who people, I think when he first selected, was going, oh, well, why is he there? What's he done? And then we played and they thought, oh, okay, no, you know what? Fair enough. I think this coaching, I don't think a coaching setup has ever had so much public backing. I think that we trust our coaches.
Yeah. It makes it easy when you win the World Cup, when you were the champs.
Yeah.
I mean, who's going to be complaining? But I think also Russia has been fortunate in that he could pick the best South African players, if that makes sense, whether they're playing in the country or playing overseas, which unfortunately some of the coaches didn't have that opportunity with the sort of rule that they had in place. But it's fantastic. It's what it should be, right? The best players should be representing their country. So it's fantastic to see. Not to obviously speak down on what they've achieved.
It's a very good point, being able to think. But I mean, even then, when they were said, right, cool, you can pick everybody, and the first thing they did was say, right, we need somebody based in Europe. So now we've got Felix Jones, he's based in Europe, and he can pop off to France and sit down with Ches and say, how you guys doing? Cool, and pop off to Ireland, stuff like that. It's when you see that the maladministration in so many unions and stuff like that, it's nice to just see a functioning setup which just seems to work, because I've got so many question marks over the Lions setup, over the Stormers and Western Province setup. I think the Sharks are finally getting it right. I think they've now announced a proper coaching setup with some very interesting picks. But I think that it's clear to see, and we've seen it with the Bulls. And yes, the Bulls are signing a lot of players, but they've got some good coaches. I mean, Joey Mangala is doing a lot of good things with that defense, and Jake White. I mean, they just even though they signed a lot of players, for the Bulls to have gone from where they were to where they've been, it shows you the benefit of having proper top tier coaches.
100%. Yeah, it's margins, Steve. At that level, it's margins and preparation. Sort of, it's paramount. It's a must. It's a must.
Francois reckoning that John Dobson would only pick players from Cape Town if he had an invitational side, especially the games that played in Cape Town. No, fair shot. Look, I think that all. I mean, obviously, you'd always have to do a bit of provincial bias. But Nduna says, will they truly give Giant Esterhuizen a chance to reclaim the jersey? A lot of people have been calling for him. He's been pretty good in the Premiership. Edel van der Merwe should have been picked as well. I think Edel van der Merwe, it was too late for him. I think that if he was doing what he'd been doing from September last year, he would have had the run. But I think Jao Penkler has had that extended run and stuff like that. And Felix Jones, what a coach, has helped our backline enormously. It's just a very good setup at the moment. I think we've got a lot of people in the right position. Very interesting to see how Don Human and Dion Davids go as well as in the forwards and in the scrum. You just said if Warren pulls us off, he might be the next All Blacks coach to replace Foster. A lot of people are not rating Warren because of his stint at the Chiefs, but I think he's still one of the best coaches in the world. Jake is a big name, but I feel the Bulls system is well organized. Oh, absolutely. But they've always been well organized. It was weird when they weren't doing well because they've always had the best youngsters. They've always had a lot of money. Kevin J said even Jake with his World Cup win didn't win over his critics, and same with Peter de Villiers after 2009. But during 2010, he showed he was out of his element. Yeah, it's an interesting look. At the end of the day, it's a very tough job. It's a very fickle job. We fans are fickle. So if Rassie Erasmus and Jacques Dienabar go and get outclassed 3 matches in a row, people will be calling for their heads very quickly. But I think that they have shown that they are just, and I think and a very nice part that they've been is the frank and the openness in the rock camp. When you ask Rassie Erasmus a question and there's none of this, there's no hostility towards the media and they're so open. And we learned so much during Chasing the Sun. I think that they've made the coaches and even the players, it's just been so accessible. I think it's never been so easy to get behind a Springbok squad because you feel like the players. You feel like after seeing the story of Mpimpi, you feel like you know him. You feel like you can relate to Sia.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, and it goes a long way when you can sort of be part of the team, when you can feel like they're representing. And I think that's the one thing. Like, They've sort of come down from a pedestal, if that makes sense, and we're sort of in touch with them. And I think, that's gone a long way. That's gone a long way to sort of get the public backing.
Yeah, I think they had to. I think after that Wellington, the decimation, I think it was Wellington. People burning their Bok jersey and cutting it up and stuff like that. It's been a long road back. But tomorrow, now we've sort of got we'll call it about 9 minutes left. It's actually been quite a nice show. So thank you to everybody who's been tuning in. Please do smash like on the video, by the way, and subscribe to the channel as well. Tomorrow we're playing against Georgians, an average age of less than 23 years old, a pack close to 900 kgs. Not a nice watch, I think, if you're worried about injuries, but if there are players who are maybe not up to stand and stuff like that, you're going to know exactly where everybody physically is in 24 hours.
Yeah, no, I think it's a fantastic opportunity for the Boks. It's going to be a very good test, especially in the tight. I think the Georgians, from the under-20 teams right up to sort of their professional side, it's set-piece time, especially scrum time around the tight. It's going to be very physical, and I think the Boks need the workouts. The guys haven't been played as a unit together for a long time, so that'll be very beneficial. Could be a very slow, tacky game, but hopefully we're able to sort of get the dominance. And I think if we're able to get the dominance, I think looking at our backline, it's very physical. We've got a physical center pairing, exciting wings and fullback. But I think, up front, it's going to be a very sort of tacky, slow, batch, because I think the Georgians will be. 900 kgs is not child's play. That's a heavy pack.
Yeah, no, I think, and then two locks who are both 120 kgs plus, for example.
Yeah.
As you say, I don't think we're in for a pretty match tomorrow night. We're not going to see. I think we'll see a much better brand of rugby on Saturday. Even though I think the scoreline will probably be a lot bigger on Saturday, even if the Lions do run away with it. I think both of the Lions play quite a nice brand of rugby. Something that's quite nice to watch. Whereas I think tomorrow we're going to see a bit of a slugfest, pretty much 10-man rugby. I think that it's going to be frustrating, I reckon, for somebody like Apleda Fassi and Roscoe Speckman on debut, and they're going to be sitting on the bench, on the wings, going, shit, if one of those bloody locks or props make a breakdown here, I'm about to learn what an international rugby is like very, very quickly. Sure. But hopefully that we can just hit our straps. And I think that for me, what's your wish list for tomorrow? For me, my wish list is Andre Pollard to show that he's fully fit. As a personal note, I just want to see Roscoe Speckman score a try. So invested in that man's career. And then number 3 for me, I'd like to see Oxenchair really hold his own at scrum time.
Yeah.
What's your wish list?
Yeah. I'll be honest with Ox. Ox has been, for me personally, fantastic in the loose, fantastic open player, but I think he hasn't shown the progression come set piece. I think there's still, for me, especially personally, around his scrumming, I think there's a couple of question marks. I think there are a couple of loose heads, for examples, that I can name, South African loose heads, who I think when it comes to scrummaging, I think they're better than him, right? So that's definitely one wish list of his, is just to see how he's able to handle himself at international level, because I think so much of our rugby and our DNA in South Africa is based around the set piece. So it's important, especially considering that Ox is virtually most likely going to be sort of second, third in line. We need him to be up to speed. So definitely get Ox going, firing. And I think it'll just be interesting to see how the loose trio, how they play together, because again, Ken Kwagga is Kwagga Smith cut out for international rugby. We saw him at the Rugby World Cup, and there were a couple of question marks around him. And so the sort of H jumper, obviously, there's a big question mark around that. So I'd like to see how Kwagga Smith also comes through. And obviously, as an Eastern Cape born and bred, definitely Roscoe and Pelele, if they can get over if they can get a couple of tries. And similarly, when he comes on, I think I want to see what he has to offer at international level, because I think he's a dynamic, very electric, exciting player.
And we'll sort of go back on that prop situation, because I think that, as you say, Oxenchair, he's a fantastic player to watch in the loose. You can see where the sort of the comparisons to the Beast comes in and also run. But like something like the Beast, he could hold his own at scrum time. I think that I was surprised at no Oboka. I thought that he would have been there. So when you mentioned a couple of loose heads, who would you have gone with if it wasn't for Ox?
Definitely Lizo. I still personally feel as though Lizo should be the backup Lucy. Considering now that Beast is out the fray, obviously Splicey kicks off, and then Lizo. Lizo is fantastic around the park. He's massive. Scrum time, he's brilliant, right? So I think I would have gone Lizo. There's also the loose head who played for the Cheetahs now in the Rainbow Cup. I've forgotten his name. Played for the Cheetahs.
Oh, cheap as that.
Yeah,
the one the other game the game last week.
No, he played for the Cheetahs in Rainbow Cup and then he moved overseas.
Oh, Bowen Fenter.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, Fenter. I think he's also a proper rugby player. I think he's a very good scrummager, very good also on the loose, very high work rate, especially in D, right? But I think it's a fantastic opportunity for Ox. I think he deserves the opportunity at the very least. So let's give him a bit of time and see what he'll be able to do. But definitely I would have gone Lizo as the backup, first choice backup, with the experience as well, the know-how. And I think he's been playing very consistent rugby for a very long time now.
Yeah, I think that he's someone who, with his injuries, you'll sit there and think, how did he not play, 40, 50 tests for the Boks? Because whenever he does play, he's got the power, he's got the technical abilities. He's a huge player. I mean, I think, when they had, you got Lizo Koboka as well as Trevor Nyakane as your two props at the Bulls. I mean, that's unreal. Those two could be starting test props. I felt sorry for him, and I mean, again, it's tough that we don't get to see him against the thing, but that's the nice thing about a Lions tour. We will get to see him against the Lions next week Saturday. We will get to see him scrum against, maybe I probably won't be Sinclair, maybe, or it could be Sinclair, but we can see him play against some proper props, and I think that he'll do pretty well. So I'm keen to see that. But in terms of tactics for tomorrow, do you think the Boks go with a Do they go and play right? We're facing Georgia. They tell you that if we only focus on Georgia and this stuff like that, we'll worry about the Lions afterwards. But do they go in tomorrow and think, how do we beat Georgia? Or do they go in tomorrow saying we're going to have to sort of be able to do these things when we play against the Lions? You've only got 160 minutes to be able to try that. So we need to try and hit our straps. And I mean, where do you find sort of that balance?
Yeah, no, I think definitely they. In as much as, yes, Georgia is the next job, but they're definitely going to be thinking about the British and Irish Lions. I could imagine that they definitely want to ensure that this is set piece time, they're solid, they get that going. And I think the big thing is going to be Pollard. And I think that's going to be the one box, if he can get hold of the game, just in terms of controlling it, tactically as well as just getting everyone going, being able to control everything. So I definitely think it's going to be an eye on the British and Irish Lions. It has to. It simply has to, right? And I think he's gone the loose trio. He's gone for a couple of combinations that I'm sure will be the starting, the starting team, the British and Irish Lions. So one eye on Georgia, but definitely the sort of longer sight is definitely British and Irish Lions. It has to be. Especially considering that the Boks haven't played any rugby for a very long time. Yeah,
I'm very interested to see how they go. And as you say, I think a lot of it comes down to Pollard. But also interesting, do you think we've seen the end of the bomb squad? I know tomorrow's not a great reflection, but we've gone with the 4-3 split. We've gone with having Herschel and Alton on the bench as well as Damien. Do we go back to the bomb squad for the British and Irish Lions, or do you think that there's a potential that they're a little bit worried about Pollard? And if he does, because let's be honest, I think throughout the entire, we got so lucky during the World Cup that we didn't have injuries. We didn't have to go and put somebody on the wing. But every single time they play and they go with a 6-2 split, the idea is Pollard will play a full 80 and they don't have to worry about him.
Yeah.
But do you think that after having done an ACL, he's come back, he's looked all right and stuff like that, he reckons he's 100%, but do you think that there could be that little bit of, if he comes off in the 20th minute, can France stay and do the job at flower half for 60 minutes? Or can we play somebody like, I don't know, a Damien Willemse? Can he do the job at flower half at test match level for the Springboks? Or do you think that's why maybe we've got Alt on the bench to sort of say, right, well, maybe we do have to put a flower off on the bench in case that Pollard's knee doesn't hold up?
Yeah, I think it's both Pollard and France there, and I don't think Rassie thinks both of them will be able to finish the game. And as a result, I think he's gone for the 3 backline players just to make sure. And I think ideally he would have used these sort of test matches to blad also at Damien Willemse at 15, but he didn't quite get that opportunity. And I don't think he wants to mess around with Willems with the possibility of putting him at 10. He just wants to first have a look at him at 15. So just because Franz Steyn and Pollard, one of them won't be able to finish the game, that we know. It's not going to happen. Right.
Yeah.
And obviously, he might be a bit worried about Pollard. So I think that's why he's gone for the split. But should Pollard come through these two series scot-free, like this series, this George series, these two test matches, scot-free without an injury, I definitely think we will go back to 6-2. It's worked for us, right? And I think how we're going to beat the British and Irish Lions is by being physical, by keeping it in the tight, and also considering where we're playing, right? The sort of game plan that we're adopting, it takes a lot out of our forwards. So it's going to be very important to ensure that we've got that backup cover and sort of our reserves. And it could be a case of the fact that Snyman also burnt his face. Now he's not available, and maybe he found it a bit risky to then chuck in a Nico on the bench or whatever the case may be. So he's just sort of went for the usual traditional 5-3 split.
And do you think the bomb squad and rests on having all four of those locks available? Because at the end of the day, I think it was Squid Rugby, and I checked it. He reckons that 4 of the 5 best locks in the world are those 4.
Yeah.
So do you think, for example, say Arcus Snyman isn't available, or Leo Diago isn't available, do we go with the bomb squad and do we go with that 6-2 split because we can go with the 6-2 split, or do we go? If there's an injury there, do we then think maybe Marvin Orie doesn't have the same impact off the bench, or Nico Janssen van der Vuren doesn't have the same impact off the bench, or one of the Deprees, for example? And as a result, it would be better to then have an extra backline player. Does it hinge around having those 2 locks? Because it kind of sort of felt as if they kind of sat there and said, "Shit, guys, we've got 4 phenomenal locks. What do we do? How do you pick them?" And they kind of said, "Well, just pick all of them." Yeah.
Yeah, 100%, Steve. I think it does boil down to that because again, a Snyman is not a lock. He offers so much more to the game. He's running the same meters as your backline player anyway. He's bringing in sort of that impact, that high intensity. So I think a lot of it did rest in the fact that we actually had 4 world class, right? Mario Itoje is almost probably the only other lock we could have a conversation in terms of form and where those guys were at that stage. So I definitely think that the bomb squad rested on the fact that we had those 2 on the bench who could come on, Mostert and a Snyman who could come in, change the game because they've got the energy, they've got the work rate, but they also then bring in the physicality. So you didn't need the additional backline player.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think that I'd be interested to see if he doesn't recover what they do. But we'll wrap it up there. We've gone over, and time flies when we're chatting rugby. I think we could do this for hours. So I have to come make a trip down to Grahamstown. We can do a sit down, do a proper podcast. But final predictions for both games for Georgia Springboks as well as Lions. And let me know what your predictions are down in the comments, people. What are your? We'll start with the Springboks. So you can give yours, I'll give mine, and we'll go to the Lions. What are your score predictions tomorrow?
I think Boks 12-point difference. 12 points. I think they'll be sort of trying to tick boxes, so it won't be too expensive. Sigma Lions versus British Lions. Oh, Steve, the Lions would have done well if the gap is less than 30 points. The Lions,
I think that's about fair to me.
Sigma
I think that's fair.
Well. I know I'm not giving you much, Steve, but I think the Sigma Lions would have done very well if the points are less than 30 difference.
Look, do you know what the nice thing is? This Lions side is the type of Lions side we could lose by 40 points and still score 40 points.
Yeah.
It could be one of those 80-40, a bit of a farcical type game, because I think we've got tries in ourselves, but we just got a defense that's leakier than a bloody sieve. So, look, I think I'm going to be a little bit more optimistic for the Springboks. I'll go Springboks by 20. I'll go 20. Let me go 20. Let me put my cock on the block. I'll go Springboks by 20. And British Irish Lions versus Lions. I mean, I can't. I would love to. I can't go out and say that I can't say that the Lions are going to win. I don't think we won't win. But I'll tell you what. Here's my prediction. I'm going to go Lions will be within 20 and they'll score at least 3 tries.
All right.
That's my.
That's
in fact, no, I want to do about 30 but 3 tries. Let me be a bit safe for the scoreline. But I think we'll score tries. I think that we've got some players who can produce something out of nothing. I think that they can try and produce a couple of special moments. I hope we can. I'll be very chuffed to at least see 2 tries. But if we don't score a try on Saturday, I'm crying. I'm crying.
Yeah.
So in the comments, we've got KBMG says box at least by 20. British and Irish Lions at least by 35. John Reynolds going box by 30 and Lions 40 plus. MC saying box by 30. Georgian to be buggered after 15 minutes. It's about right. And MC going British and Irish by 40 at least. Wow, they're disrespecting my team, dude. Come now. You can't be seeing everybody saying by 40 here. Come now.
Be fair.
I mean, all I'm saying is that the British and Irish Lions play every 4 years. So can we not go and find our team from 4 years ago? Can we not bring back all the buggers? Can we not bring Ackerman back and his son and Faf? And can they not just loan us one to see the Similani for tomorrow night? He's not playing for the box. Why don't you just come and play for this? Oh, it's going to be horrible. Well, it should be entertaining if nothing else. As Grant Swart said, it's very nice to have you back on here. Enjoy the watch along tomorrow. It's Greekers versus Pumas. So it's maybe not the best game. Well, having said that, those two are actually suddenly playing decent rugby. So I think it should be quite a cool game. Your boy Ville Engelbrecht is starting, I think. So you can check how he's serving there. So enjoy that. To everybody else, thank you very much for tuning in. We'll be live tomorrow for Curry Cup. We'll be live tomorrow for the box. Might be live after the box game. We'll see you on how tired we're all feeling and stuff like that. And then I'll be live again on Saturday. We're not quite sure which games we'll be doing. I'll be live for the British and Irish Lions versus Lions, but there's also some other games that we might try and squeeze in. And then we'll hopefully try and have some fan forum on Saturday night as well. We'll also obviously have all the press conferences for tomorrow night, as well as hopefully on Saturday from the Lions. So make sure you subscribe so you get to have access to all those. Thank you, everybody. Have a fantastic evening. Please do keep safe out there. I hope everyone's managed to stock up on a bit of beer for tomorrow night. And I'll chat to you guys all very, very soon.